gather around for some ramblings because we're about to go into the video game called Elsie, which is this futuristic roguelike game based around these mechs that kind of are rebelling against their evil doctor. That kind of futuristic storyline. If you've watched any videos with me in the past, you probably know that I really love roguelike games, but I'm not super into the storyline, so be expecting a whole lot more about the mechanics rather than, what's got these characters peeved off at their creator. And given that I am a huge fan of roguelike games, you definitely know that I am giving this game every chance because it definitely looks up my alley, 2D platforming action roguelike game. Heading into this one expecting some kind of Dead Cells / Skull the Hero Slayer kind of mechanics, although, it's kind of hard to live up to the reputation of those two. There are a few things that I didn't quite like about it, and I'll get into that a little bit later, but there's definitely a lot to work here, and I wouldn't be crossing Elsie off your list just yet. As I mentioned, this is a 2D roguelike action game in which you will be running through different arenas and battling monsters, clearing them, gaining XP, getting lots of upgrades, and at the end of each area you'll run into some kind of boss that hopefully, if you beat it, will allow you to progress through to a different biome or a different area. There are a lot of upgrades in this game. You'll get upgrades through beating little mini arena rooms which have some chests that you can unlock with keys, by leveling up, or just by beating bosses. The level ups range from things like increased critical damage, or even things like allowing your bullets to change the way they projectile or boomerang and stuff like that. I must say, I'm a big fan of games that give you a lot of upgrades, and Elsie definitely delivers in this area, although after a while it might become a bit repetitive. You have your little trusty gun that you use alongside a couple of different spells that you can use throughout your runs, and you can upgrade these and find different little tweaks to them. The controls of the game are pretty good, with the wall climbing being the main kind of sticky point, and the ability to do some jump combos which kind of don't work all that well for me, especially if you miss it by a little bit. So whilst I like the controls, they're not as responsive as I would have hoped, and definitely think they could use some tightening up in this regard. The dash is really good, the ability to platform is fun, and the shooting feels really good as well, so it's definitely a tick for mine. As you play through the different areas, you'll go through procedurally generated rooms, but it will become repetitive quite quickly, with the enemies spawning in the same points, the same enemies, and you kind of get a bit of a deja vu feel as you play through. And each of these will lead to a boss fight, and that's where I really want to talk about one of the things that peeved me off when I was playing through early doors. The bosses are just so much more difficult than the actual arenas that precede them. I mean, sometimes I was getting through barely losing a health point at all, and then getting completely wiped, not even taking a third of the boss's damage off, with the amount of projectiles and attack patterns and things like that, which is just crazy. Now, I did beat the bosses eventually, although I must say I kind of relied on damage bursting them down before they had enough time just to take away my health bars. I found this pretty frustrating, and it really led into a game that felt like I was just grinding out currency to try and upgrade things in the home base, which I haven't mentioned yet. Yeah, you unlock and upgrade things in your home base after each death. And speaking of upgrades, there's 3 different currencies that are used in this game, and it's not exactly clear what you're doing. You get a little bit of a boss intro, and then they throw you straight into it, and you're running through in a couple little small tutorials, but you're collecting currency to use in the shop in-game, then you're collecting scrap from somewhere that you use to do some upgrades in the home base, and then there's some other coin things that you're using in the home base, and to be honest, I wasn't even keeping track of any of that, and I just go back to the home base and just spend whatever I had there, and it felt overly complicated for me. I mean, I'm a big fan of simplistic mechanics in this area, and I don't think this is simplistic at all. I ran into a couple of bugs, namely around the audio. When I got attacked, I would lose audio for 3 or 4 seconds, which really made it hard to play through, and on a couple of occasions I got stuck. But saying that, I know that there's a little upgrade on Steam before the game goes to full release, so I'm hoping those things are ironed out. It's undeniable that Elsie is a really pretty looking game with some really bright pixel art graphic and some nice art that they've included in as well around the characters during the dialogue scenes. However, I'm not a big fan of the UI at all. I think it's really complicated. It's hard to see what's happening. Pressing start and going through the menu is really complicated, and sometimes there's so many layers of pixel art and bright things on the screen that you don't actually know which ones are platforms and which ones are part of the background and things like that. So I think there could definitely be some work on the clarity, especially when in regards to the menu system. Elsie's out maybe today or tomorrow or something like that. And even though I've mentioned a few of the things I don't like about it, I just want to reiterate, this is a fun kind of medium tier action roguelike game. So if you enjoy the genre and you want something a little bit different, then this one might be for you. Let me know if you agree with what I've said here in the comments below.